Joining us now is the governor of New York, Kathy Hochul. Thank you very much for joining us tonight, Governor.
Thank you, Lawrence, and thank you for your rousing defense of our beloved state of New York. New York will never be a loser state, so we appreciate your comments at the outset.
I mean, when you know the subject, as you obviously do, it is the easiest case you can possibly make. I mean, this idea that, Donald Trump they enforced the law against Donald Trump, so now billionaires and businesses will flee New York. It's just the easiest possible thing you could respond to.
I would say corrupt business people like Donald Trump may not find a nice welcome here in the state of New York, and that's great with me. We have a great, thriving economy here. Literally a few hours ago this afternoon, I was with the Secretary of Commerce, Gina Raimondo, part of the Biden administration, to announce the Biden administration's investment to help an $11 billion new fab being built in upstate New York to cement our leadership in the semiconductor industry. They're here in New York. They're not somewhere else. Same thing with Micron. Micron, with 50,000 jobs, $100 billion investment, is coming to New York. So no matter what is said on stations that no one pays attention to, this is the place that businesses want to be. And Donald Trump, I'm sorry, you didn't follow the laws, and there are consequences to breaking the laws in the state of New York.
Let's go to what Donald Trump has been saying about abortion, and mostly not saying. He's ducking the issue as much as he possibly can. New York Times is reporting what he's really thinking, which is he will sign some kind of federal abortion ban that will be negotiated with Republicans in Congress, exactly what the details of it are. But what that absolutely means is taking rights away from women in the state of New York, women in California, women in Massachusetts, and dozens of other states.
Well, he can run, but he can't hide from his words. And what is coming out now, and finally in the public discourse, is the stark contrast between the president we have, the president who is committed to women's rights, something here in the state of New York we've been fighting for since the first Women's Convention in 1848. It's in our DNA to fight for women's rights. So then contrast that with someone who, yes, take him at his word. He said he was going to stack the Supreme Court with pro-life justices. He said he was going to overturn Roe v. Wade. So why wouldn't we believe him now when he says that if he were to be elected in some doomsday scenario for our country, but if he was the next president of the United States, heaven forbid every woman in this country, regardless of what their governors are trying to do to protect them, would be washed out. They would be losing their rights. And to me, that's abhorrent. My mother fought for these rights. I fought for these rights. My daughter and my newborn baby granddaughter should have the rights that were fought for and not stripped away by a man named Donald Trump just because he's pandering to get those votes, in contrast to what he said a decade ago. So you can't trust him other than to know that he will do whatever he can to put women in a place where they do not have the decision to make the decision about their own body. And that is frightening. Women of this country should be terrified at that prospect. They should be mobilized. And I believe there will be consequences at the ballot box this November, just like we saw in New York 3, this congressional race that the whole country was watching, because abortion was on the ballot there on Long Island as well. And all the Long Island Republicans were saying, no, we're going to win this one. It's going to be easy. We've got our candidate. People are angry. They're not happy. I'll tell you what. You put abortion in that conversation and say this person supports and this person opposes, that is a clear line, a demarcation that women, even Republican women, independent women, and Democratic women will say, no, that's too far. It stops right now with the next election.
Yeah, I was watching. My view of the campaign on Long Island was local TV news in New York City, and the advertising, which the Suozzi ads and the advertisements in favor of Democratic candidate Tom Suozzi were all on this, that I saw, were all on this abortion issue, showing once again, as we've seen in other special elections and other elections since Roe was overturned, that it is such a powerful driver in these campaigns.
I knew it would be. And that's why when I had that conversation with Tom Suozzi, who ran a spirited campaign against me, and a lot of people were surprised that I would give him my support because of that. But I'm a Democrat first. I'm an American
I just
first.
want for the national audience to know, he ran against you in the Democratic primary when you were governor running for election this last time.
But I'm a Democrat and American first. And I know how important it is that we take back the House of Representatives, to take back our democracy. So Tom Suozzi was the person I knew could win. But our conversation first was around the question of, Tom, will you be fully supportive of women's rights to choose, women's right to have an abortion? He said, absolutely, absolutely. And I said, well, then you need to run on that. Make that an issue. And he did. And that was the issue, I believe, that helped win the day. So also, when I ran a few years ago, we talked about abortion, my support for abortion, a constitutional amendment, which is now on the ballot this November. But here in the state of New York, a lot of people didn't really think that could ever be jeopardized. So it really didn't rise to people's consciousness as something that's really under threat here when I was running against a Republican member of Congress then. And they said, you're a blue state, you're safe. I think what Donald Trump has done right now by talking about a national ban in a serious way, that this could become the reality. Women of even the blue states, the New Yorks, the Californias, the Massachusetts, and others, they are the ones who ultimately mobilized to get out there and support their members of Congress, whether they're in a safe seat or a battleground seat. We have a lot of battleground seats right here in New York. The path to the Republican majority being wiped out and the Democrats, led by Hakeem Jeffries, taking over, goes right through New York State. And as the leader of the state party here, I'm taking this seriously. I'm working on the issues that I believe will help us. And one of them is not just abortion, number one, but number two has to be the Republicans' refusal to accept the deal that was negotiated by President Biden, Chuck Schumer, and conservative Republicans in the Senate to help deal with the migration problem, to help deal with support for Ukraine, to support with Israel. And they said no. And I said, well, once you break it, you own it. So we're going to use that as a wedge issue against them as well this November.